Hello and happy Monday to you. This is Sarah from Funky Fossil and I'm popping in with a video a day later than scheduled because the footage that I recorded earlier this week didn't have any audio on it, so I'm going to give this one another go. What am I using today? I'm going to use some of the elements from our new Brighter Days collection, which just released a few days ago. I think there are a few of this one still left, but not many. And it's got the kind of gorgeous kind of bird from Kim Dello Designs. Love the nest with this one as well, and these beautiful classic wildflower silhouettes. So I think I'm going to use these as my focal points on the cards, and I'm sure I'll add a little bit of interest in the background with the stencil too. But also there is a Sunday Makers bundle which I did put on the shop yesterday, but obviously is related to these makes, which is I'm going to use our Mixed Media Compendium paper pad and two stencils that Kim Dello previously has designed for us. One is called Markings, the other one is called Scattered, because I'm planning to use these as well on these makes. So I thought it'd be great to be able to offer you these three items together at a fantastic price. And the way I'm planning to use the Mixed Media Compendium is actually to use it as the base for stamping my focal points. So for example, the nest can be stamped on this element here and get those glorious kind of reddy browns in there. The bird could be either really strong reds or kind of more soft pastel neutral colours. So this is a really cool set of papers. If you want to stamp over the top and cut out a focal point and have some immediate interest and kind of colour on your image, then this is a great paper pad to do that for you, as well of course as providing you with a ton of fabulous backgrounds. So I'm going to use it for my stamping today, and I'm planning, I think, to use these for a little bit of further visual interest in the background. So check that out. There'll be a link in the description box below with this bundle in it for you. Other things I'm planning to use, well, let me just start by giving you a bit of a sense of where I'm going with the video today. These are some of the kind of sample cards that I made when I was first working with these designs. And what I want to do is something very similar to these, which is use some acrylic ink in the background, which I've got some Liquitex turquoise and some Dahlia Brownie olive, to give me a kind of a really loose watercolory look in the background, but also then do a little bit of more mark making over the top, either with crayons or with pencils. I've got some pencils here, watercolour pencils, or I've got some crayons as well. These are actually, today I'm using the Neocolor ones from Caran d'Ache, which the ones, Neocolor 1 is the one that is not water reactive. Neocolor 2 is the one that will move if you add water to it. What else? I've got some Posca pens here as well, in case I decide to do some mark making with those. I've got some washi tape because I think that's a great way of adding a little bit more of a layered interest to the project. So I'm kind of going mixed media, but in a very simple and pared back way, in that I still want my finished designs to have some white space around them, but I also want to kind of personalize that background and have a bit of fun with the mark making element to it too. Now, if you don't have acrylic inks, then you could use watercolors, you could use distress inks. If you're using distress inks and wanting to kind of put that on an acrylic block, spritz it and use it over your background to kind of contain the colour, that's another great way of doing it. So if you don't have acrylic inks, it's not a problem. You'll still be able to very much get a similar look to the one that I'm working on today. Now, these are the cards that I made for the last video that didn't work. So this is kind of where we're going. Now, on this one I did use the wonderful black and white Shadow Dreams 8x8 paper pads as one of the backgrounds, but that's now sold out. So On one of the backgrounds, I'm going to use some book paper that I've added gesso over the top to. And for the other background, I'm just going to use some kind of mixed media paper that will give me a kind of a plain background. And this is totally personal choice. I don't actually know, I've not tried it on the book paper. I don't know whether this will be sturdy enough to take all that kind of moisture. But certainly if you were working on book paper and adding something like sprays or wet inks, then you absolutely would recommend you add some gesso to it, because that will certainly give it a little bit more protection and prevent that pigment just sinking straight into the paper. This is very, very porous, very absorbent paper. So if you add some gesso, it will at least give it a surface that that ink will kind of move around on for a little bit before it dries. If you wanted to keep your text absolutely clear, you could use a clear gesso. Obviously I've gone over here with white gesso, watered it down and left it quite thin, so you can still see that there are words underneath here. I haven't completely obscured the text. So I've used, this is a big one, Liquitex gesso. I like this one because it is quite a fluid one. If your gesso is quite heavy body, quite a thick one, then you can just water that down, and that will allow you to get a thinner coat. If you don't have gesso, you could use white acrylic paint, and again dilute that slightly just to make sure that you've got something giving your paper some tooth, some kind of protective layer. So they're the kind of two bases I'm going to work with, and you'll give you a feel for whether you prefer having a completely clean background around the colour, or whether you like the added interest that the text in the background will give you. So I'm going to just set myself up with the inks and some water, and we'll have a play at making some of those backgrounds. These are really simple cards to make, so I'm hoping the process itself won't take that long. We can add some colour. Once that's dry, we'll be able to add a bit of mark making and stenciling. So let's get started. I'm going to add some turquoise ink to the plain paper. This doesn't have any gesso on it, by the way. It's quite a nice heavyweight mixed media paper, so I haven't got any gesso on this. Now I'm going to try and contain the colour a little bit, so I've got a kind of brush here and a pot of water just off camera. I'm just going to very generously put a first coat of water down on that card front, and I'm being quite loose, and I'm also not covering the whole of it, so where there is the moisture, that will contain the colour, and then we can add further moisture if we want to. And of course you could have this taped down as well, because of course the paper will start to move a little bit. I'm going to be quite, the acrylic inks have a really kind of strong amount of pigment, so you see I've added it's just a spritz of water there just to help it move, but it will stay relatively contained to the pool that I've already created with that water we put down to start with, so you don't need to worry too much about it suddenly going all over your card, unless that's what you're looking for, of course. So I could, and I don't want this to have too hard an edge to it either. I want it to look fairly organic, so I could have a bit of a drip. I've cut this card so it would fit. I'm just going to tap it up, and we can get a bit of a drip going down to the edge. You see it all pooling there. There we go. Perfect. In fact, I might go horizontally with this one. So I'm just letting the ink do its thing. You can see how wet the card is. If you are ever thinking, oh, there's too much on there, I mean these acrylic inks are quite intense in colour, so I only put one drop down. but sometimes I find it quite helpful to have another piece of card to one side, so I can blot it and start another background if I want to, or I can just dilute it further with some more water. I can pick up colour with, well, this is while it's all still very wet. I can pick up colour with kitchen towel, and that will just pick up the the edges where it's running and is quite intense. So you've still got a reasonable degree of control. We don't want to be we don't want this to look too contrived, but equally you can kind of control it a little bit if there are things you want to do just to help get the effect that you're looking for. I feel now that that's got 2 drips. I should have some drips there. I don't know why. I don't know. No, I think I'm going to leave it. So I'm going to set this one aside to dry, and let's do a green one on the book paper. I could spend a whole afternoon doing these, to be fair. So I'm not going to be quite as generous with the water here because, as I say, although it's got gesso on it, I'm not sure how robust this book paper is going to be. I've already torn this piece down to size as well, by the way, because I wanted to make sure that it kind of would fit on a 5x7 card. I still have some of the text showing around the edge, so I thought it would be easier to cut to size. So let's see. So this one isn't as wet, which is, you can see there that sometimes if you drop the acrylic ink into something really wet, it just blooms out naturally. This one, it'd be interesting to see how this one responds, because I haven't really tried using the book paper. You can see this book paper is kind of ruckling with the moisture that we've applied, which is absolutely fine. Just leave it to dry of its own accord, and it will flatten back out, or put it under once it is dry, you can put it under a bit of a weight for an hour or two, and it will flatten out. So I just put another drop in. I'm holding my brush really high up because I'm trying not to actually start almost kind of painting. I'm just really wanting to dab at that colour and help it move. Be brave and just put a little bit of water on there for the spritz. So I could watch any kind of ink move. I'm just gonna again do as I did before, just try and encourage a little bit of drippage. You don't need to do this at all. Just think it will help. It enhances that loose look. There we go. Put that out here. I love this olive green as well. So just as you saw me do previously, I don't know if it's got enough green to me. I think it does. I think it does. Just can't leave it alone, can I? There we go. That's enough, Sarah. One of the cool things about this as well, I don't know if you'll be able to catch it on camera, but you can see the kind of brush strokes where we put the gesso on, so the ink kind of naturally highlights any textures that are there in the paper. I think that will dry nicely. So I'm going to leave these 2 backgrounds to air dry. You could heat set them, and that would work as well, but because I'm looking for something relatively soft and organic, I don't want to accelerate that drying process while the inks may still be doing their thing. So I'm going to give this one will take a little while to dry because I've saturated that paper, and the gesso is obviously kind of going to stop it soaking in too quickly. So we're going to let those dry, and we'll come back then to see how we might want to work over the top of these. See you in a second. While we're waiting for those two backgrounds to dry, I just thought one thing that's always worth kind of thinking about doing with your watercolory backgrounds to add a little bit more texture and looseness is just adding some of that olive green to some already wet card. And you'll see me do this before, potentially on previous videos, but almost kind of create a pool with your ink. Go with a little bit more here. So I've got quite a nice intense matte colour. Let me just, there's a whole big drip of water there that I want to just stop from running away. So you can use this almost as a little bit while this ink is still wet and really fluid, as a bit of a kind of stamp pad. So I've got one of the fabulous kind of abstract rectangular kind of doodle designs from the New Beginning stamp set. And if I stamp into the wet cardstock, you can see it lifts some of that colour, but it probably will travel back over that colour because it's still very wet. So you can see it's moving, the ink is moving, and will probably cover back over. But sometimes some of it just, for example, let's put it onto a piece here. Some of it just stays and creates a little bit of interest on a background. So if you're wanting to create some loose marks, watercolory look marks, you're lifting a little bit of this ink from the background you've created. You can stamp off, or you can keep stamping around the design, around the pool of ink. You can see this is drying, starting to get a bit drier. It's holding a little bit more of that pattern. So it's a really fun one just to experiment with. You're never going to get a kind of crisp impression of the stamp, but you sometimes get some lovely kind of loose marks, both within the main puddle. I think I've got most of that ink off there, and you see it's dried it a lot quicker as well because I've been lifting ink out of that puddle. So just a quick little reminder or tip that if you're wanting to use your stamps to kind of lift some of the ink, reposition it around your design and work with whatever kind of lines remain, because of course you can still, once this is all dry, use this stamp with the actual ink and go back over the top, and it will all look like you stamped it in a very loose way. So there you go, just another quick tip of ways of using that acrylic ink while it's still wet. Another good reason for using acrylic ink rather than the watercolour is, of course, once this is dry, it will be permanent. So if I wanted to carry on now working over the top with other mediums, this will now dry permanently, which still gives me the watercolour look, but also the finish isn't going to move with any further layers that go on top of it. So yeah, just a few further thoughts on watery acrylic backgrounds. So the two backgrounds that we started off with are now dry, nice and this one's dried, the paper's dried quite nice and flat actually. So now's the time when we can have a bit of fun with just some abstract mark making and some layers to add a little bit of interest to the colour we've got down on the background. So first off, I thought I'd do some scribbly lines, and so I'm just using a pencil here. I'm using a watercolour pencil, but I'm not planning to activate this, so any coloured pencil would do, or a Posca marker, or just a graphite pencil. If this was wet and I was dragging the pencil through it, then that would give you a cool effect too, because of course that pencil would, or that pigment would move. So again, holding my pencil very loosely, and I just want to do effectively a squiggle down the front of the card. I just like the fact that it just takes your eye from top to bottom, and of course this is pretty much tone on tone, so it's not going to be too intrusive. It's just a little bit more of a mark making element in the background there, but it does break out of either end of the ink. So let's try crayon with the blue one, but again just a similar effect or similar look. So I'm just trying to think how I want the eye to move across the page, or the card front. And of course in the middle of the image it's pretty much invisible because we've used tone on tone. If you wanted a stronger look or a bit more contrast, then obviously you'd go with a different colour. So we can add some stenciling too, I thought would be cool. And I was going to start with the Floribunda, the floral one that comes in the Brighter Days, collection. And this could be go in any direction. You can see this is well loved. And what I'm wanting to do now is I'm wanting to stencil outside or toward break out of the colour we've created in the centre, but quite gently, quite a soft effect. So I'm going to use I think peacock feathers will be probably my best bet at a reasonably tone on tone look. We'll see what we get. And of course I can start on the inside of the ink, so just make sure I don't go straight onto the outside with too much colour, and it will add some cool interest. Even though it's tone on tone, it will add some cool interest to the colour that you've already put down. Well, it's kind of tone on tone, close enough. I'm not looking to go all the way around either. Let's see. Oh, I like that. Can you see? How cool. That's really nice. Let's add a little bit more down the end here, or the opposite corner, I should say. I'm thinking that my bird will go in this corner. So some of this, or quite a lot of this, may well not be visible come the end, but some of it might, so I think it's always worth having something down there for you to have a look at. So yeah, that looks cool. What I thought as well, because it's quite an intense band of colour, is you could break that up. So remember, you can go back in now with white and soften the look of what you've got down here. So as with mixed media, anything, you can always kind of pull, make things more intense or pull them back to and fro as you're going. So I thought, let's use the markings stencil that's in the Sunday Makers bundle from Kim, and I'm going to go in with some gesso purely because I don't have my white paint here, so gesso will do the same job. It's way more than I need out on the backing paper. I'm just going to use a cosmetic sponge, as you'll have seen me do many times. Pick that up on the sponge, dab it out, so I'm not going in with too much moisture. This gesso, as I was saying earlier, is a little bit more fluid than some of the acrylic paints I use with my stencils, so I want to be mindful that it doesn't, if my sponge was too full of the gesso, it might bleed under the stencil design, which would be fine as well, to be honest, but not necessarily what I'm trying to achieve. And I don't think I'm looking to cover the whole of the background. looks good, doesn't it? Now this is one of the, you know, when I was saying earlier about acrylic inks not moving. Just going to put a bit just around this corner here. So if you were doing this over a watercolour or a water reactive medium, the gesso might lift some of the colour up and lose its whiteness, but the acrylic ink shouldn't react with the gesso, so that should stay white. But I love how that's just kind of broken that colour up a little bit. Makes it look a little bit mottled. Let's do, I'm not gonna, I think what I want to do on this one, I might add, I've got one open. Well, I'll open the one I've got if I haven't. I was thinking I'd use the scattered, the other stencil from the duo in the bundle. I can't find it. Let's open one up then. Here we go. This one, I really love this one. And again, this is just now I'm aiming to work within the green area. I don't necessarily want to put too much on here because I don't want to, I quite like the impact of this green on that background. So put some in this corner here and see what we think. Oh, that does look cool, doesn't it? I'm sold. That works nicely. But I'm not going to go all the way across. Just go for that. Yeah. So quite a subtle look, but with both of them, just that little bit of white stenciling, I think stops it looking too blobby. This is a technical term, I believe. So is this dry? It should have dried pretty much instantly. So I'm just going to add a few final marks to both of these, trying to avoid my gesso in the corner there. A few final marks to just complete these backgrounds. With this one, I think I've got choices. I could go with my Posca, my black Posca, or I could go with my Stabilo. I might go with the Stabilo, given it's, I'll keep it quite earthy, I think. So I'm going. So this is black. So I'm conscious. I'm going to do a black silhouette of the flower, and I've got the text in the background. So I think I'm just going to leave the green as the only colour on here, and not bring another colour in. And this, again, completely optional. I'm just doing some random dots. And being quite careful because this paper's starting to feel a little bit tired. I know the feeling. So I've got that in that corner. Let's do again. You've got the gist by now. I'm pretty much working opposite corners of these cards, leaving a space in the centre, which will give me therefore plenty of option to add sentiments, focal points, etc. So I quite like that. And that's kind of following the line of that scribbly mark we made. So it will all kind of tie in together. And this one, what shall we do? Got some indigo here, some deep indigo, so this would be a bit more of a contrast, but it won't be as strong a contrast as black on this background. So let's go for a different mark. You may have marks that you particularly like to make on your projects and be the thing that you typically go for. And for me, these marks are now just tying the inked areas to the background, to the kind of whiter space. I say again, in this corner I'm not sure how much we'll see. So I've done a bit more down here because I just don't know. So both of those really simple little bits of mark making, but I think they make a big difference to those backgrounds. A bit of stenciling, just a few pencil marks, and you've got a little bit more texture and interest there. So the next step will be to add some focal points and see how the cards come together. Right, so first things first, let's stamp our focal point onto the green background. So I'm going to use one of the beautiful kind of flower silhouettes from the Brighter Days collection, and I think this will be lovely. I've just positioned it to the off to the side. I'm going to clear heat emboss it. My reason being, I find that the VersaFines don't always dry very happily on acrylic. Now that's with acrylic paint. I'm not entirely sure with the inks. I've not tried that, but I thought just to be on the safe side, if we seal it with clear embossing powder, then we don't need to worry about that at all. So I'll put it in my platform just so that I can always go back in for a deeper impression if I'm not happy with the first one. If the whole of the paper doesn't come up with me. Actually, I'm quite happy with that. I'm quite happy with that. Let's put some clear. I haven't used an anti-static bag, mainly because I'm using clear, so if I do get a few speckles elsewhere on the card or on the paper, it's not gonna cause me too many issues. And we'll heat set that. This paper's doing well, isn't it? This book paper. It's amazing what a little bit of gesso can do to give older papers some life. So, just in terms of finishing this one off very quickly, I think I've already stamped out some sentiments that I think will go from these sets. So I'll go with Brighter Days Ahead. And I think all I'm going to do now is a final little bit of embellishment to this panel is add a little bit of our typewriter roll washi tape. It's kind of very small type. Oh, that's a nice picture. Quite a small type, white on black, but the set of 4, so you've got black on white, white on black, and the thinner roll as well, 15mm roll. So I love fonts, I love typewriter kind of elements as a way of adding a relatively abstract bit of interest to our projects. So I'm tearing into, so I'm probably off camera, but I'm tearing into this into the washi tape because I don't want it to look too kind of neat and tidy. Everything else is looking quite torn and worn on this, so a torn edge I think will work nicely, and that will just settle the sentiment, and just to give it a little bit of symmetry. I'll put another piece up here of the washi, just wrap it around the paper. So we'll stick that on. The only thing I'm thinking as I'm looking at this I might do is add some white splatters can't decide just yet. So when we put this on a panel of black cardstock on front of a card blank, you can see how beautiful it's going to look. Just look like a fragment with that simple floral on. So we also need to add a focal point to our blue card, and what I've done ahead of time is I've used the mixed media compendium to cut out and to stamp and cut out some of the birds, and I'm trying to decide now whether the blue bird works well or whether we want the contrast with that pinky bird. Oof, that's a dilemma. That's a dilemma. I think I'm kind of feeling the pinky bird actually. I think I'm going to go pink bird. I don't know if I've got a white gel pen here, because what I would typically do would be add a little bit of just white. This is a thick one, might be a bit too big. A little bit of white into the eye there. We'll just make it pop a little bit. And what I'm going to do is pop our bird into its nest again, stamped from the mixed media compendium, one of the rusty papers. So I've got it stamped there, and I've also stamped it a second time and cut out the front. Now if you wanted to put this with foam tape and give it a kind of dimensional look, that will look fantastic, but it would just give me the scope to pop the bird in the nest without it kind of sitting uncomfortably on top. And you can see you can see now the elements that are still going to be visible in the corner of the card, and it will just visually tie across. So, and I've got a few of the eggs as well from the stamp set because I think they're super cute. So I'll just put that there. I'm not going to push it down too much just yet because we're going to put a bird in. So if we have the bird like this, then we can pop a few of the eggs into the nest. And then both those birds actually and the eggs were stamped from the same sheet of paper from the compendium, so it's amazing how different things can look when you take them from different areas of the page. Get a third one in, or not. This one's stuck down too well, so I'm not going to attempt that. There we go. Put it in the front there. So all we're going to do with this one is put the phrase "New Beginnings." A bird in the nest with its eggs feels quite apt, and I like the way the bird's looking towards where the sentiment's going to be. And there you go. So I don't think I'm going to add any further detail to this one. We'll just see when we put it against the black how nicely that's going to look. So I'm just going to literally map these cards, and that will be the project today finished. But hopefully it's got you thinking about some really simple kind of techniques with a bit of mixed media, stenciling, mark making, creating your own kind of watercolour backgrounds, how effective that can be and still leave you some lovely white space around your focal points. So I've hoped you've enjoyed today's video, even though it is arriving with you on a Monday. Please do like and subscribe to my channel if you don't already. I've got plenty more crafty content up my sleeve, and I'd love it if you could join me for some future makes. So I shall see you later. Thanks very much for watching. Bye for now.